Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have one determination, which is 7 West End Road, LLC at 7 West End Road. It was an application to reconstruct a staircase, import fill, regrade, and revegetate the landward side of a dune, and it was hereby granted.
Ms. Marigold?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Hillel?
Yes.
Is Chris on yet? No.
And anybody who wants more information, the complete application is at Village Hall. Now we have.
Liz, my vote on that is yes.
Okay. Didn't we call you? No.
No.
No, because you weren't at the last meeting.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to group together the requests for adjournments till August 14th, 2020, where we might be meeting in person. There are 5 requests. Care of Maidstone at premises of Lexington Lounge, LLC, 207 Main Street. Donald R. Mullen Jr. at 67 Cross Highway. James D. Danella at 49 La Forest Lane. Eric and Lori Blatstein at 211 Lily Pond Lane. Justin G. and Elizabeth P. Stelter, 3 Georgia Road. Do I have a motion to accept the whole group?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we have the new hearings session. The first one is the application of Alexandra Kate Skellett at 33 Church Street. Ms. Bennett, will you please?
Application of Alexandra Kate Skellett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-2626 for area variances from Chapter 278 zoning to construct a patio, chimney, and heat pump. A 96 square foot variance is requested from Section 278-3A9 to permit 1,596 square feet of coverage where 1,500 square feet is the maximum permitted. A 10.8 foot variance is requested from Section 278-3A3A to construct a chimney located 14.2 feet from the front yard lot line where the required setback is 25 feet. Variances of 8 feet and 7 feet are requested from Section 278-3A5B to construct a patio and heat pump 2 feet and 3 feet from the side yard lot line where the required side yard setbacks are 10 feet and any other relief necessary. The subject property is 5,000 square feet in area and is located at 33 Church Street in Residence District R40. This project is classified as a Type 2 action in accordance with SEQA.
Is the applicant present?
Yes, I am here. I'm Alexandra Skellett.
Okay, would you like to talk about your application?
For sure. We're just trying to, when I bought this house, it had a deck out the back, and all we're trying to do is pave that deck. We want a heat pump in our garage so we can work throughout the winter.
So basically, so I can work as a wood shop.
Yeah, he likes to work.
So I'll help you out. The patio itself will be smaller than the original wood deck that was there by about 75 square feet. Initially, that wood deck went up against the side of our fence line, right up to the property line. We had to remove that in order to fix the foundation. Now we don't want to put that back because it just doesn't fit, I think, going right up against the side of the property line. So this is just right outside the back door. It has it's 10 by 14. It'll be enough space for a table and a small barbecue. That's about it. And we aren't going to do any built-ins there. We decided against that in the long run. And the chimney itself is mostly on the outside. It's a kit system, so it will be, I believe the architect drew it up a little bit wider with allowing for some ventilation around 27 inches or so, protruding out the front. The key point there is the house is lopsided. If you guys noticed when you came and looked at the house, that it's not, the center line of the house is about 4 feet off, meaning it's to the left, and that's due to a really bad renovation they did in 1973. from the 1948 house. And that was mostly what we did in the renovation, was fixing all those mistakes. So we hardened the house and did that, and we left a lot of room for bracing and everything to put that chimney in, but it's just going to be easier to attach to the outside. And what we hope to do is now the front of the house will look a little bit more natural, as opposed to just kind of looking at like, windows on one side and lopsided on the other. And through the renovation we initially did, we actually took away square footage in the house, which is, I think, somewhat unusual. There was a closet in the back that now acts as our doorway, and we removed that, and it's a nice little porch right there that will lead onto the deck that we're asking for.
Okay. So the heat pump, so you're going to be using it as a workshop and not a garage?
Well, that's a really good question. So it has to be both. It will. All the stuff, we have stuff coming next week. Everything will be able to be pushed up against the walls. It's on casters, so there'll be a table saw on casters. There's a bandsaw. There's a miter saw. All that stuff will fit, and the car can get in by about 4 or 5 inches on either side. We've tested it out a couple times, but like today is a day that we'll put the car in the garage. But unfortunately, we put an apron on the front, so we can't pull the car in the garage today. Thank you, Pam. You've been really good about helping us on that. So. Yeah, it will be partial workshop, partial garage, and then partial place for Alexander to work out occasionally.
Yeah, I do.
Now, how much noise will your equipment make as far as affecting the neighbor?
Well, it's a good question. I think that anything, because of the way it's insulated and how tight I made the garage, when I shut the door, and if I run one of the, like the track saw I have now, when I'm running in there, when I shut the door, you can't really hear it. Outside the garage, you can hear it. Probably it's like if the stereo is turned up pretty loud, but it's not going to protrude outside as long as I keep the door shut. So that's one of the reasons we need some better circulation in there, because otherwise I've got to pull the equipment out and put it on the driveway, and that makes it really difficult. So I think it's just this is the best way to accommodate that specific problem.
Now, but in the summer, and again, it's nothing to do with putting the heat pump there. You probably leave the doors open to get circulation since you don't have AC, correct?
Well, the heat pump will provide that. It's both.
Oh, so it does both.
Yeah, it's an unusual system. These are new, and I used to have this exact system in my old apartment in Sag Harbor, and it was only air conditioning. But this one actually is more designed for heat. We had the choice of we could put baseboard heating in and do a through window air conditioner. But the cost of that is almost what it costs to put one of these systems in. And secondly, that'll cost us about $38 to $40 a month to run, versus this one's going to cost about $7 a month to run. So it takes about 3 or 4 years to make it up in the value, and it's super quiet, and that's kind of what I wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, do you have something?
I have some comments.
Okay.
So the chimney in the drawing looked rather large that was submitted. There are other options. The chimney could go inside the house and go through the roof line. You could do a wood stove up through the roof line. We do exempt chimneys from the side yard setbacks, but the maximum size for that is 2 feet by 4 feet. So I would be okay with the chimney if the maximum protruding was 2 feet by 4 feet. The heat pump, it's a split that also acts as air conditioning. Does kick off some noise, so that will be also in the summertime when your neighbors are outside. I think that could go in a more conforming place on the inside yard of the garage, since it's a hanging wall unit. Currently, you're requesting relief of about 70%. Apparently, the unit, you shared with me yesterday how small the unit was, only about 16 inches. So to be fair to the neighbors, I think it should be hung on the inside wall of facing into your yard. And then the patio you're requesting, I understand that there was a wood deck there before, but you're going about 2 feet from the side yard line. So that's an 80% relief you're requesting. Many of the lots are very small in the village. You could see it when you bought it. It was a tiny lot. And by granting these other 2 variances for the patio and the heat pump, I think we could have a long-term adverse impact on the village and where people are placing decks and equipment. So that's my comments.
Isn't the patio in a corner of the house? So that you're basically filling in part of a corner of a house for the deck?
Yeah, it's the house is L-shaped if you look at it in the.
That's what I mean, in the L.
Yeah, that's where that goes.
And that's where the deck was before.
And it's acting as a patio now. We just have gravel down.
Chris, do you have something? Pam, is he sitting on this?
Is he in attendance? I don't see him.
He's
Is he
here.
okay.
What are you talking about, Chris?
I saw him before.
He's here.
I see him. I just can't hear him.
Maybe he's on silent.
Yeah,
Are you talking about Chris or me?
Chris.
Okay.
So,
In fact, I don't see him now. Maybe there he is.
yeah, applicants, what do you think about moving the heat pump to the other side?
I could move it to the other side, but it's still in a setback. So I think also if you look where that is located, on the 3 feet from the other side of my fence, I have the new garage of Pizzo. Behind me, I have a pool. And then on the other side of that, I have pool equipment. So it is actually that corner is where everybody has their service area.
Mhm.
Pizzo's air conditioner is right there. The Steinberg behind me has his pool equipment right there, 4 feet from my garage. And then the other people, I don't know their last name, but I just know them for walking the dog all the time. They have their pool equipment that's sitting not too far from the back fence. So that's the area where all that stuff is. Hence, that's where we were originally going to put it.
Yeah, well, you do have I think it's 0.11 of an acre. It's small.
I wish it was 0.11. It's 0.1. Yeah, but it could be.
You know,
So
it's,
for the
so,
comments on the chimney, it's a kit chimney. It's the smallest kit chimney we could find. Moving the difficulty with moving it inwards more, we're going to try to keep I want to keep it 24 inches protruding out, but to move it inward more requires a lot of different framing on the front, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Meaning that you've got to go into the roof line quite a bit in order to do that. And what we're trying to do is limit the amount of intrusion that goes into the roof line. And the only way it could change is by about 4.5 to 6 inches. So I don't know if it's worth it. You know, we can talk about it if that's a big kind of problem.
Have you discussed this with your neighbors?
So my neighbor to the north of me, Richard, we've talked about it numerous times and there's no issue. John was willing to write a letter for everything we're asking for, and Steinberg has said she has no issue with what we're doing.
yeah, and we didn't hear from any neighbors,
Yeah.
any objections whatsoever. So, Craig,
No, I've gone over there and where the heat pump is from where I was standing at the front of the garage, I don't even think you're going to be able to see it. Is that right?
No, you won't. Because of the way the vegetation is, there's that large arborvitae that blocks that. Right now, you can see we've got leftover tile that's sitting there that I've got to get rid of, and that you can't really see that from the street.
I don't have any problem with this. And I know about the combined air conditioning and heat. I didn't think about the idea that you could therefore keep the machinery that's in there, which is not big machinery, quiet. With the doors closed, I think it probably will.
Yeah.
The quiet.
What I do now when I run the saw, I shut the door and then I open it up when I'm done. And then what that does is otherwise it just gets it gets 85 degrees to 95 degrees in there when it's 80 degrees outside. So that's the way I'm doing it now. It'd just be a little easier.
so do you think these are insurmountable problems, or are you willing to let them have the patio and the heat pump where they want it and the chimney?
I think they put a lot of thought in it, and I don't think it really. I mean, the only thing that might disturb the neighbors would be the heat pump, but I think you talked about that, and there's other equipment from the neighbors. I think I'd be okay with it.
I'm fine. I don't have any objections. They've thought about this a lot.
Okay. And Phil?
Well, it seems that the will of the board is to approve it the way it is.
Okay, so then do I have a motion to close the hearing?
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving right along to Book Georgia LLC at 82 Applecog Road. Ms. Bennett, would you please read the application?
Application of Book Georgia LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-1258 for area variances from Chapter 278 zoning to construct a swimming pool, pool house, and patio. Variances of 24.5 feet, 20.4 feet, and 11 feet are requested from Section 278-3A-5A to construct a patio, swimming pool, and pool house 30.5 feet, 34.6 feet, and 44 feet from the front yard lot line where the required front yard setbacks are 55 feet. Variances of 22.6 feet and 5 feet are requested from Section 278-3A-5C to construct a pool house and swimming pool 17.4 feet and 35 feet from the side yard lot line where the required setbacks are 40 feet. A 4.3-foot variance is requested from Section 278-3A-5B to construct a patio 15.7 feet from the side yard lot line where the required side yard setback is 10 feet and any other relief necessary. The subject property is 46,595 square feet in area and is located at 82 Applecog Road in Residence District R160. This project is classified as a Type 2 action in accordance with SEQA.
The applicant present? And I know we have some neighbors also want to speak. So let's start with the applicant.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Trevor Darrell, Plumbing and Darrell PLC, on behalf of the applicant. Nice to see everybody. It's been a while. I'm here on behalf of the owners of this property, which is currently under renovation, and the application before you is to relocate the pool that was on the property originally. It's as part of the original development. It has been filled in, so now it's earth. But that pool, when they purchased it, was situate further into the rear of the property, but was in a non-conforming location. The proposed pool is the same size, but it does add the smaller pool house and some additional patio. And it's proposed to be moved towards the further towards the front of the property, which then necessitates the variances because the property sits on the corner of La Forest and Applecog. So we have double front yard setbacks. So both the southerly side as well as the easterly side of the property are on road frontage. The proposed application was brought in contemplation of actually some of the concerns I think that were raised by the neighbors, and the neighbors, I think some of them are here, and they did submit letters as well, and they'll speak to their own concerns. But we were trying to not infringe upon the neighbors with bringing this application because the proposed location is nearest road frontage. So we went, and across the road is the open field of the subdivision. I think one parcel has been built on, and that house sits quite farther back off the road with driveway between the Applecog Road and their new constructed house. If we move the property towards the rear, then we would be getting closer towards the neighbor to the rear. When you look at their property, their aerial photograph, their house and pool and all of their sitting area is nearest our northern boundary line. So the proposed application is pushing as far away from them as we possibly could, but still, the shape of the property does necessitate the additional side yard variances, because as you can see on the map, the property sort of is a odd shape, and the westerly boundary line sort of enters from the west to the east through the boundary. That property line also is the boundary with the neighbor who did submit a letter, whose tennis court, and I think I sent you a copy of the aerial photograph yesterday that shows that existing tennis court. So we're trying to separate ourselves from the neighbors who are already, using their properties. The applicant does plan to also revegetate the property substantially so that it wouldn't be seen from the road or from passerbys. And the noise-making equipment, the pool pump, or any of those items, as you saw on the landscape plan, is actually to be proposed in a conforming location. So we're not having any of the noise-making materials to be in the area where the actual pool was proposed to be installed. The applicant is sympathetic to the concerns of the neighbors and the overall development of this neighborhood in general. The house, as the board will note, that is not seeking any variances. The renovation is being built and proposed on the existing structure. So they haven't expanded the GFA or the setbacks of the actual house. With that, then if you were to try to propose the pool in that rear part of the property, the setbacks actually become more problematic than where we're proposing it in the front yard, where there's much more space, lawn area to sort of use and try to develop for the proposed pool location.
But if you move it closer to the house and toward La Forest, you'd be conforming. What's wrong with that?
So that's where the driveway comes in. If you see on the survey.
No, I think he's talking about just moving it into the building envelope. Is the pool square footage the same as the previous pool square footage? Because it looks longer to me.
So my math has it at the same 40 by 20, both in the prior as well as the proposed current.
But if you pull, it's just a third over the.
Correct.
And so if you just pushed it back toward the proposed deck, just slightly, you wouldn't even need a variance. I actually don't get why it was designed this way.
Well, so
it still would be near the swim, near the road. It would be near the tennis courts, but you didn't need a variance. And as you know, one of the criteria is whether it can be achieved by some method feasible to pursue.
Yes, the concern from the applicant was because that was originally, discussed, and that they do have small children, 10 and 12, and they wanted to have some lawn space for them that was, between the house and the pool, so not near the roadway portion of the property. So that green space was sort of part of the concept and idea, and recognizing that the pool, was only a third over, and we're happy to, try to scooch it forward some or shrink it down, but we try to keep it within an amount that the board, may consider would be, not overly egregious. Really, we want to have, keep some of that lawn available, because if whoever went to the property, you'll see on the westerly side of the property, there's really any windows or anything, so you can't see out that side of the house. Most of the windows and doors and sliders are out towards the yard in the front, which is where the proposed pool is.
Yeah, it seems to be plenty of lawn, or there will be when it's re-vegged.
So I have a couple of comments. I note that the proposed structure is next to the tennis court and to the road, but it appears from the plans you could be fully in a conforming location, as well as the pool house and the deck. The difficulty self-created. When they bought the house, they knew there was 2 front yard setbacks they had to comply with. That was, which would affect the redevelopment, which is reflective in the price they were able to obtain the house for. If you put the pool in a conforming location, they'll still have plenty of lawn. You're just moving the lawn forwards. If they're worried about the safety of the children and the inability to see them from the house, they can put up a pool safety fence around the house. And I'm not really sure what the relevance of it can't be seen is. I've heard that a couple of times. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not a challenge. I mean, if that was the case, everybody would plant 30-foot hedges all around that property and do what they want.
Whatever they want.
That's my take on that.
There is a letter from a person, an owner at 18 LaForest, that says just about what Phil says, but he suggests that the pool, instead of being kind of roughly north-south in its location, it goes east-west. That takes the pool entirely out of the setbacks. Now, I don't know if that has a deleterious effect on lawn or not, but it eliminates the variance problem.
Okay.
Chairwoman
Yeah.
Liz, can I just make one point of clarity?
Yes.
So the pool that was removed was 20 by 40. I just dimensioned the survey, and this swimming pool is 20 feet wide, and I dimensioned it at 48 feet in length. So the way I measure it, it's 48 by 20.
Well, visually, it does look a little longer.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I think because they added the hot tub and the steps to it, that probably accommodates the additional 8 feet.
Right.
So.
Right. Are the neighbors ready to weigh in on this?
Hi, I'm Alexandra Rusoff. I'm at 50 La Forest. Book Georgica originally was a La Forest Lane address.
Mm-hmm.
The new driveway on Appoquog is new. I don't know how what the procedure it was to change it, but we are objecting to the precedent of these variance requests just because there is plenty of room on the lot in the building envelope to put both the patio and the pool house and the pool.
Okay.
We're also surrounded by looming construction, and I fear as a resident that if you grant this variance, the house across the street will ask for similar variances. And it's a smaller and very oddly shaped lot. This 82 Appoquog is actually a big square. So it's not that complicated. The pool, we were led to believe by the neighbors that the pool would go in front of the house so that they could see their children. There was no talk about pool houses, new decks, or anything like that. And we're worried that the whole neighborhood is becoming very suburban and not the bucolic and quiet residential area it used to be.
Yes. La Forest has definitely seen some changes.
It sure has.
So, is there anyone else that wants to be heard online or on Zoom?
There's no callers on the line right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for listening to our.
Thank you we have your letter on file also.
Thanks.
So I'd ask if the board would leave it open so I could speak to my clients and see if there's some other, design that may come up that may still need, board approval, or and then, make a determination from there.
Okay, well, because of that, we will hold the meeting, the application open. Should we close it today? Adjourn it today?
Yes, please.
Okay.
August 14th.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All right, so we will move on to the John and Mary Clark Family Limited Partnership at 52 Ocean Avenue. Ms. Bennett, would you like the notice?
Application of the John and Mary Clark Family Limited Partnership, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-81320 for area variances from Chapter 278 zoning to legalize alterations of a purportedly legally pre-existing non-conforming second residence. Variances are requested from Sections 278 2B1 and 278 7C 2D2 to legalize alterations to a purportedly legally pre-existing non-conforming second residential use where a parcel of land is limited to one single-family residence. A 5.7-foot variance is required from Section 278-3A-4A to legalize alterations to a purportedly legally pre-existing and non-conforming second residence located 28.3 feet from the side yard lot line where the required setback is 34 feet and any other relief necessary. The subject property is 76,685 square feet in area and is located at 52 Ocean Avenue in Residence District R80 and is partly within the Ocean Avenue Historic District. This project is classified as a Type 2 action in accordance with CEQA.
Is the applicant present?
Yes, I was looking at Chris. I think you still can't hear him. Good morning. Trevor Darrow, Fleming and Darrow PLLC, on behalf of the applicant. I believe Mrs. Clark is also on the line after I did, I think.
Yes.
So the application, as Ms. Bennett just read, is to convert the previously labeled garage space to be a habitable space. The parcel is unique in history, and my client has had this property in her family for since the 1950s. In 1968, her father applied for a building permit, which was submitted as a part of the village file, seeking under permit number 4877, that was actually approved by the village, to petition the garage for a bedroom and bath. So that garage had a bedroom and bath installed per that permit back in 1968, and then the property was subsequently transferred from Mrs. Clark's father to her in 1969. She and her husband since then have owned this property in their ownership since then. The property has a storied history, and Mrs. Clark can speak to that history when she gets on the line. But for my purposes, the work over the years since the property was purchased, at a certain point in the 1980s, Mrs. Clark's stepfather broke his hip. And the family at that point then had a live-in aide to assist him in caregiving, and she stayed in the barn. During that process, during that time, Mrs. Clark's mother improved the living area, the bathroom, and made it, much nicer than it had been back in the 1968 permit. Then in the 1990s, Mrs. Clark's brother-in-law, who resided at 10 Crossways, which neighbors this parcel, had a stroke. He fell ill with a stroke, and his home health aide moved into the barn as well. At that point, during the 1990s, the barn then was converted from having the remainder portion being garage to being habitable space, and was finished off with heat, AC, and a small kitchen. So those improvements have remained since the 90s, and it wasn't until more recently when Mrs. Clark realized that the foundation is falling apart, crumbling, and needing much attention, that when she spoke to the building department, and actually it was through Bill prior to his passing, my partner, they started discussing with the building inspectors and determined that there was no C of O for the existing conditions, even though we were able to locate those permits that permitted it to be constructed back in 1968. The conversions are for heat, AC, and per my application, while the plans from Bruce Siska, the architects, do show a proposed kitchen, and I've gone over this with Mrs. Clark, while she would love to have a second kitchen, I think the board, obviously, if it were to grant this application, would be less inclined to have a second kitchen on the premises. Really, this is not meant to be a second residence on a single property. It's meant to be the bedroom and bath for any guest, and a sitting area for them to have. But any kitchen or eating would be done with the main house. So there's no proposal for that second kitchen. Any second kitchen would be removed as part of this application. So it's really for open habitable space that's heated with air conditioning and used for storage primarily when they're not here in the summer for the most part. The barn remains in its current location that it's been in since it was originally moved there back in the 1950s. Originally, the electric and septic ran in off of 11 Crossways. And when the Clarks did their new construction of their residence in the late 90s, they then tied in the septic and electric to the barn from their residence, as opposed to coming in from a property that was not on the same tax map. The proposal is to leave it in its current location, lift it up and redo its foundation and set it back down. No further expansion of the unit. As Billy's memo had said, it's larger than the 250 square feet accessory structure, the building, a pool house, but there is no pool on this property, and there is no other pool house or accessory structures on the property. There's only the main residence. It's surrounded by tennis courts, pools, and garages on all of its neighboring borders. There's no residences that border it. So on its north property at, or southern boundary at 24 Crossways is the tennis court. Its northerly line is a garage, which is at 19 Pudding Hill address. And then on the westerly line, there's 3 lots, which 46 Georgica and 30 Crossways, and I didn't grab the other one, but those all have pools sort of on the rear side of those properties. So it has no neighbors that would be impacted by the use of this existing bedroom and bath by having the additional sitting room, which would be used by the same person who would be sleeping in that bedroom. And we'd like to be able to do it all with a valid C of O and satisfy the building inspectors that everything is to code.
So,
can you hear me?
The 2000, the CO from 2000 just overlooked it or missed it? Is that what it was?
I cannot figure out why it reads the way that it reads, because that structure on the interior, whether I can't speak to if the inspectors didn't go into that, because it looks like a barn from the outside, but interior, the work had been done. So I can't speak to why it wasn't listed on the C of O.
Right. I had never seen purportedly legally pre-existing non-conforming. So I did reach out to Billy and I said, tell me the history of this, because it's quite unique.
It is, and I think that's important because there is no precedent setting here, because I don't know any other parcel that has a situation like this where we have the record showing that it was requested and permitted, but never a CO'd following the construction.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Clark is willing to swear under oath that those people resided in that barn.
Yeah.
But what is going to be the current use of this barn? Who's going to use it? Would you rent it out, or is it only internally?
No, never. It's never been rented, and it never will be.
Can we make that a prerequisite, put that into this approval, that it can't be rented to a third party?
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Okay.
Beth is saying no. Beth?
Well, if she says you can't legally do it, but that is absolutely our intention, is to, it's for any family members who may come out to stay in it, but it's not for resale, retail, rental.
I'd like it better if it was for an aid. I think.
Right. Well, that's where it stemmed from. Sure.
I think Mr. Ackerman had put in a brief to the village board about that. Have home health aides and places for them to stay. Phil, would you like to talk about it?
Yes, I would. I mean, this is a full-on guest cottage on the property. Again, we have a situation where the difficulty was self-created by continuing improvements without permits. I'll get to the other one. It increases the degree of nonconformity and the intensity of use, and it does set a precedent for other expansion of other kind of garages, chauffeurs' quarters, etc. Matter of fact, there's 2 just like this on today, and it does have the potential for an adverse impact on the neighborhood. You'll get people wanting to convert their garage or increase their habitable space. The CO from the 2000s, I think, is just wrong. I think the thing to do is to go with the 1960s building permit which gave you a bathroom and a bedroom, and to allow them to lift it up and redo the foundation. I don't have an issue with that, but I think the additional conversion of garage space, even though it already occurred, I think it needs to be taken back to garage space and the kitchen removed. So I'm in favor of going with what was on the 1960s permit, even though it was never closed out, but not in increasing past that point. That's my take on it.
So if you pull out the kitchen, you basically where you were in 68, right?
Basically, except for having concrete and studs on the walls, right? So without the improvements that were made to the sitting area, I mean, it's hard to maintain the heat and AC in the building.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having the finished, it's basically nothing more than a storage area. It's not that large, and it's just not exposed to weather, basically, instead of being an open garage with concrete floor.
In the 2000 CO, it mentions a 2-car garage in the main house. Is that so?
Yes, there's a garage.
At that point, it was not a garage because you had another garage. So I think that is key, that it was overlooked, that it had improvements and was no longer the garage. Craig?
But there's no issue on square footage of the main house, is there?
No. But I'm saying if they have a garage, the building inspector should have looked a little carefully inside to see what that was now in the year 2000. Craig, do you have some comment?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wondered, this never had a health department permit issued to it. Is that an issue? Is that a problem?
It's going to be, according to the building department, will require health department approval. So ultimately, I'm not sure. The system that was put in when they did the main house renovation, they tied into the septic. It's going to be ultimately determined by the health department if that is approved.
One of my problems to begin with was the setback problem, that it's sitting partially in the side yard setback, but this is a large property. I don't have any notes yet about the size of it. I've walked through the property and it is a big property. So that the correction on the setbacks for this smaller house is not a big deal. I don't see that. And if you're going to get the Suffolk County Health Department approval, which I think is very important, then my concerns are pretty well rested.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Mrs. Clark, would you like to speak?
Well, originally this barn was part of the house that is on Crossways. It belonged to Mrs. Ely way back in the 40s and 50s. And she kept the house, or sold the house, but kept the land between her house and our house, or my parents' house. And then after her husband died, she sold it. But so the barn was always there, and her gardener used to live there, because actually the piece of property that barn sits on, where it goes back on the west side,
right,
that was her garden back there.
Mm-hmm.
And this was where, back in those days, your gardeners came from Riverhead for the summer. They didn't drive back and forth every day, and there was no local landscaping, which, naturally you can get done now. But and so it didn't have a kitchen because nobody had that much power, but it always had I guess that they call them a hot plate,
mm-hmm,
and some plug-in appliance type things. And those were all there when my father's gardener lived there for a while, because he came from Riverhead. And then my stepfather's caregiver, being from Jamaica, a sort of an unfinished barn wasn't an issue. And it really wasn't until my brother-in-law had his stroke that the caregivers wanted air conditioning, which you can't do with a barn that doesn't have sheetrock and insulation. And so that's what we sort of did. And slowly over time, it was like the kitchen just got a little more sophisticated. When you had better appliances available. I mean, I think that my my father-in-law's caregiver had one of those wonderful sort of like ovens that wasn't just a toaster oven, but you could roast a chicken in it.
Right.
And one of those little mini fridges. I don't have a problem losing, because we don't really use it as a kitchen. We use the refrigerator at Thanksgiving and Christmas to store food, but the stove is never used, so I have no problem losing that.
Again, I think it's a dangerous precedent to legalize the additional space. Again, I'm fine with the bedroom and the bathroom. You can insulate that bedroom and the bathroom so that it can be heated and air conditioned. That's not a problem. There's plenty of houses where the house abuts a garage that's not heated. So that's where I am.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, my mic is on. So this cottage seems to have been here since the 60s. Am I correct, Trevor?
Yes.
50s, prior to the 60s.
And have there been any complaints by any neighbors about this cottage?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, my feeling is that there's been no complaints on this since the 60s. You had a building permit. I've got no problem with this if they're willing to not have a kitchen. I mean, it's been there for a long time and there's been no complaints, and it's a very large property.
Yeah, I don't want to disagree with my new vice chair, but I think if you take in totality that they did get a building permit, that in those days, this is how in that estate area, almost everyone does have a small second residence. And this was clearly a place that either the gardener stayed or healthcare worker stayed or a relative stayed or whatever. And so if you remove the kitchen, I would be for it. So, Larry?
I agree with you, Liz. It's been there a long time.
Larry?
Yeah, I feel if there's no kitchen, and assuming they never rent it out, because there could be a new owner, I have no problem.
Well, it's very small to rent out.
Yeah.
Even though they're going sky high, I think this is it's a very de minimis request.
Well, but it's amazing when you think what people rent out, but I don't think that it's their intention, but maybe the new owners, but if that could be put in as a requirement, but I'm okay with it. No.
We actually have a buy-sell agreement with all of the property owners because it's all relatives.
No, that's very nice. Craig?
I'm fine with this. It's a lot of space. This is a tiny spot on there. And it's been there for a long time. It's been there for at least 70 or 80 years. So let's go with it.
Right. Okay. Well, then we can close this hearing. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Then we will move right along. We're doing two of these applications together since they have basically the same owners under different LLCs. We have 23 Hedges Lane LLC at 23 Hedges Lane and 128 LPL LLC at 128 Lily Pond Lane. Ms. Bennett?
Application of 23 Hedges Lane LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-1377 for area variances from Chapter 278 zoning to make alterations to a pre-existing non-conforming accessory residence. A 47.5-foot variance is requested from Section 278-3A4A to make alterations to a building located 7.5 feet from the side yard lot line where the required setbacks are 55 feet. Variances are required from sections 278-2B1, 278-7C-2D2, and 278-3A11C to make alterations to a non-conforming use and to install a bathroom that will have no internal access to the residence and any other relief necessary. Prior variances have been granted to permit the continued existence of an accessory residential building and accessory structures on a lot without a principal residence. The subject property is 217,740 square feet in area and is located at 23 Hedges Lane in Residence District R160. This project is classified as a Type 2 action in accordance with SEQA. Application of 128 LPL LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-1378.1 for area variances from Chapter 278 zoning to make alterations to a principal building and to a pre-existing non-conforming second residential use. A 9-inch variance is requested from Section 278-3B2A to make alterations to a residence and elevate it to a height of 37.7 feet, where a prior variance granted a maximum height of 36.7 feet. The maximum height permitted by zoning is 35 feet. Variances are requested from sections 278-2B1 and 278-7C-2D2 to make alterations to a pre-existing non-conforming accessory apartment/cottage use when a residential property is permitted one residence. A 47.8-foot variance is requested from Section 278-3A3A to make alterations to a pre-existing non-conforming accessory apartment/cottage located 22.2 feet from the front yard lot line where the required setbacks are 70 feet and any other relief necessary. The subject property is 145,147 square feet in area and is located at 128 Lily Pond Lane in Residence District R160. This is a contributing property in the East Hampton Village Historic District listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The project is classified as a Type 2 action in accordance with SEQA.
Is the applicant present?
Hi, good morning. Lenny Ackerman for the applicants. First of all, I want to thank Pam and the chair for advancing these hearings, telephone call into Zoom. It's wonderful because it gives us an opportunity to bring in the two architects who've worked on this project, Mark Ferguson and Thomas Manis, who are available to answer any questions and could, if you wish, review any of the plans with you. We have a few plans that if questions arise, we'll be able to put on the screen. This property at 23 is 5 acres, which contributes to the 10+ acre compound that are being restored by our client in conjunction with 123 17 Hedges and 128 Lily Pond. It's an incredible project. I'm sorry to have to burden you with another application, but when this project first came before the board, we were contract purchasers and our access was very limited. It was only when we were able to begin the in-depth due diligence and preliminary demolition that we discovered some of the issues that have led to the application with respect to 123. But first, with respect to 23. 23 is basically the Caretakers Cottage. We've changed a bit of the interiors. The application, of course, is driven by the fact that it is within, partially within the side yard. And the only thing that we're doing significantly, despite removing one of the garage ports, is we're adding a garden's restroom, which is accessible only from the outside because of the extensive gardens, as you've seen from the architectural drawings and landscape that we've provided. So with respect to our grounds, of course, there's not a significant change of character of the neighborhood because there's no change in the footprint or no additional GFA. There is no alternative because it's non-conforming. It's really a very small change in the design. It's mostly cosmetic. There's no environmental impact. And yes, it is self-created, but this structure has been there at least 50 plus years. Now, with respect to the main house and the guest house, essentially what we're looking to do is add an additional foot to the height of the house. As I think explained, we did something a little different in our memorandum. We actually inserted drawings in the memorandum we thought would be helpful to explain it. But I've asked the architects on board if you have any questions with respect to the necessity for the increase in height. They certainly can explain it away. I think we've done a pretty good job doing that, but we're here to answer any questions. With respect to the accessory dwelling, basically, we're moving the pool equipment into the basement. The ZBA originally granted a variance for the pool equipment, but we prefer to put it underground. We think it would be better in the design of the gardens, and it would, I think, diminish the noise impact. With respect to the design of the accessory that motivates the application, they decided to do some windows. And again, this is more driven by design without expanding the footprint. There's no change here substantially in the character of the neighborhood. There's no objection by the neighbors. We've talked to Mr. Fetterbush and he's accepted it. I don't believe there's any objection letters. Are there, Pam? Or?
No.
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 Going through the criteria, obviously the benefit here, we're trying to, and the architects can explain this better than I can. We're just trying to build and renovate a house in 2020 that was, built many, many years ago, and bring it up to standards that are more livable, more lighting, more openness, for the client. And of course, this was necessitated by the fact of the discovery of water damage and the like that we've identified in our memorandum. I don't believe these variances are substantial. There's no adverse impact. And of course, they're self-created by virtue of the fact that it's a historic house. So I'd ask if you have any questions of Mark or Tom, they'll be very happy to answer.
Why don't we start with the cottage?
Sure.
Caretakers Cottage and focus on that.
On 23, Liz, the cottage at 23?
The freestanding
main house?
No, the other one.
Oh, the other one. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So is that outside bathroom, is that added onto it, or is that part of the third bay?
It's part of the footprint. There's no expansion. Correct, Mark? Tom? The bathroom?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's carved out of the existing volume of the house.
Well, so, I mean, you don't need any special permission to put a bathroom within a house, within a existing footprint.
Oh, well, Liz, what we were concerned about was perhaps within the definition of garage, there's a prohibition of restrooms. That's why we did it that way. That's why we made the application as we did.
Okay, so the third bay.
Now, explain, how is it that you're going to put, there's a restroom that's going to be in the garage. Now, how is that not a problem? It's a garage, and this is going to have.
Right. It's a garage. Yeah, it's a habitable space that has a bedroom and has a living room. And we wanted to create access from the outside so the gardeners would have a place. There are going to be extensive gardens here, and the gardeners have access from outside only. It's not creating a second bathroom. There is an pre-existing non-conforming bathroom.
Now, if you ever build a main house on 23 Hedges, can you negate this living quarters as a second residence?
It's a different lot.
No, but I'm saying on 23 Hedges.
Yes, can we do what?
In other words, on 23 Hedges, there's no main principal residence.
Right, and if
you build one,
yeah.
Can we say that this garage is negated as a second living place?
No. You don't have the ability to do that.
No, you can't. What? You can't take someone's right away. That's called due process, Larry.
No, the reason it's there is there's no principal residence.
No, it was always there, Larry.
Living quarters.
No, Larry, it's always been there. We didn't create this. This cottage is pre-existing non-conforming as a second dwelling. It was always on the property. All we did is demolish what was there so we could make it part of the compound for the landscaping. It has a pond, it has a tennis court, it has a pool. What we're not doing at the present is maintaining the open space to have a 10+ acre compound. This is a cottage for the caretaker, or gardener, whoever you want to call him, who's maintaining 10 acres of gardens there.
So you're taking one full garage bay and adding it, creating additional habitable space, including one bathroom. Is that correct?
Not a bathroom, a powder room. There's no shower. It's just a toilet and a sink. Accessible only from the exterior. Yeah.
Understood, but you are taking one full bay and creating additional habitable space.
Yeah, as you see from the plans, Phil, you see from the plans, what we did is took the bay and extended out the living area.
So I have the same issue with this that I do with the prior one, which is an intensification of a pre-existing non-conforming use, and that it will drive additional conversion of square footage in existing cottages to become habitable space. Again, I think this is a bad precedent.
Well, but there's no GFA question.
No, there's not a GFA question. It's intensifying a non-conforming use. That's
would you prefer
on the existing one? I think
right.
I think that these should be addressed by legislation, where there should be some legislation that allows true guest cottages. I don't think it's for the zoning board to kind of chip away at the existing legislation of the zoning code. That's my opinion.
But you would prefer the garage as opposed to the expansion of the wall coming down and making it into a living room. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct. I would prefer to keep it as garage space. I mean, it's already legally I would prefer to keep it in an existing state with the existing living space and the 3 bays of garage.
Well, if we were creating another bedroom, I could understand that, but all we're doing is exchanging a garage with all the environment impacts of a garage, a car, travel, all of that. We're converting that garage into just living space, which means a comfortable place for a caretaker after work to come in with his family or whatever, have a place to sit. Right now, he has to sit in the kitchen or his bedroom or her kitchen or her bedroom. We're just trying to make it a bit more comfortable for them.
No, I understand what you're trying to do.
No, I understand. I mean, I don't see the precedent. Where else in the village of East Hampton are you going to find 10 acres of open space devoted to these magnificent gardens, and you're saying you can't have a little more comfort for your landscaper or your caretaker or whatever. But I don't know. I'd like to hear from other members of the board if that. I don't see a significance of precedent here.
Is there a way to ensure that there will be no intensification beyond what they're doing now?
No, this
could be a family compound.
This would be pre-existing non-conforming. They always have a right to build a house, in the future, but that's not the intention. That's not the present owner's intention. He's not investing the millions of dollars in the restoration of this home on Lily Pond Lane and creating these magnificent gardens with any intention of expanding this cottage. I mean, that on its own, if you suggest a covenant, perhaps, Craig, to limit the development to what it is, I'm sure that's something I could discuss with the client.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I don't see that. I don't see that as an issue because there is nothing else to expand here. We tried, what we did is within the footprint here. And all we're doing is just, if you look at the existing floor plan, there's I guess it's three car bays, and a bedroom and a kitchen, and we just wanted to make it a bit more comfortable for the takers and the gardeners. That's all.
Larry,
if there's some way that we could make it so that their intensification doesn't go any farther, this would work fine with me.
Beth, are you okay with? If I would talk to the client about that. Okay, sure.
Larry, do you have something to say?
No, I'm in agreement. Again, it's pre-existing non-conforming. You're expanding it a bit, but I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Can I speak? What I'd like to say is that as a zoning board, we have to weigh the benefits of the application against any detriments. And to be honest with you, this is a very large property. I don't see any detriments. You can't see it. There's plenty of square footage. There's plenty of the setbacks. It's pre-existing non-conforming. I'd like a member of the board to tell me what the detriments are of adding this bathroom, because I don't see many.
Well, that would be.
I mean, you can't. What's it? What were the problems? Like, again, if you can't see it, it's not causing many problems. Do we have any neighbors weighing in on this, or anyone from the community? Did they write any letters, or do we have any opposition?
Well, I don't believe if you can't see, it's fine. I mean.
Well, I didn't say that. But I'm just looking to weigh the detriment and the benefit. The benefit is they want a bathroom. What's the detriment?
So you have a bathroom in a garage with something that's not permitted, right? You're intensifying the habitable space. You're increasing the habitable space, intensifying the use. Now you have numerous of these there's a number of these situations throughout the village where you have like a small bedroom bathroom off a garage. So we continue to get these requests, and here we go. We've now set a precedent. I understand the 10 acres, and I get that fact, but it's the precedence of expanding a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Phil,
that's why they're here.
That's my feeling, Chris.
But if I may, Phil, what you're saying is exactly what I have been promoting and pursuing with the village, that they need to write some legislation that deals with secondary cottages, dwellings, homes when I proposed legislation 3 years ago when my wife was ill, that was the point. You could provide a place for a nurse or a caretaker. You see, I mean, we do need in the village an opportunity for people to know what the rules are. And this is a perfect example. And I understand, Phil, what you're saying about precedent, but perhaps by speaking out like you are now, we'll motivate the village board and the planning and zoning committee to really focus on this, because we need parameters. It shouldn't be each one a one-off application. I think this application is a fair and reasonable one. I wouldn't support it if it was. We're not adding a bedroom. We're not intensifying the use beyond providing the caretaker or whoever's living here with a place to sit and watch TV. That's all we're doing. We're not saying to him, well, you got to go into you got to live in your bedroom or in the kitchen. He doesn't need 3 garage bays. So that's what, when the house was built in the 70s, they had 3 garage bays, and they told the caretaker, don't watch television, go to sleep and get up early in the morning and go clean the garden. So, okay. Do we have
well, I think Phil has brought up a very good point.
He did.
About,
He did.
turning it over to, because this comes up, I would say, constantly about adding something. We do have a precedent with Steven Spielberg. We let him convert a garage bay into habitable space at one point about 2 years ago. And even earlier than that, there was a big estate on Hither or Middle that we let have a outside bathroom for their help, for their garden staff. So we have in the past, but I think, Phil is right that it's about time.
Yes.
Chairwoman, can I make a comment, please?
Yeah.
Can I give some information? I have a question for the applicant, and I'd like to just add a comment. The Spielberg matter that you bring up is interesting. I actually worked on that when I was wearing a different hat. And it was after that application that the code was changed. And prior, when Spielberg was approved, the expansion of a second dwelling was a special permit. So the zoning board was reviewing these as special permits and granting special permits. And as a result of that Spielberg project, the trustees made the expansion or the existence of a second residence a non-conforming use, and tried to limit their expansion by basically categorizing them as non-conforming uses. So the Spielberg matter was sort of a tipping point, and it was legislated, and I think that was about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
My question to the applicant, the plans don't actually say, it might be helpful for the board if you could explain the amount of habitable area within the building now that exists, what's legally pre-existing, and what's proposed. I mean, fortunately, it might be pretty small. I don't know. It's hard to tell from the plans. So maybe that would help them.
Well, Tom, Tom, the existing and proposed staff cottage plan, page 8 that we have, that you all have this, but it have dimensions. Do you have dimensions somewhere, Tom, on a plan?
We have. There are dimensions on the permit set, Len, that was submitted, but just for the purposes of sharing the information, the proposed square footage habitable space in the proposed plan is about 600 square feet out of the about 1,000 square feet for the structure. The existing, because of the small garage bay that we're taking over, would be approximately 400 square feet of livable space in the 1,000 square foot structure.
So it's expanding from 400 to 600.
Correct.
Okay.
Is that, Billy, is that answer?
Isn't it? It's 1,033 square feet, right? And so you're
the total
1,000 square feet. You're expanding by about 400 interior space. You're absorbing about 400 of that as habitable space.
I think it's more along 200 square feet that we're absorbing, but your overall numbers are correct. I was rounding. Yep.
I don't know, I just thought that might be useful for the board, that's all.
Sure, thank you, Billy.
Anybody want to speak on this? Now that we've seen it's around 200 square feet that they're adding, taking away.
There's no.
I'm okay with it.
Line.
There's a caller on the line?
No.
No.
I'm saying, I'm okay with it.
Craig?
So am I.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, well, that's three.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the Lily Pond Lane property, 128 Lily Pond Lane.
Yes. Liz, do you want to open up and ask any questions of the architects on them?
Yeah, I was wondering why the change in the height variance for the main house, why wasn't that anticipated when you had come to us before?
Well, let me answer first, Mark, before Mark does. The first application was made while the owner was still in possession. He gave us very limited access, and they did it based upon a set of plans without being able to commence any demo work or digging around the foundation. There also had been a tenant in. That's the reason why we couldn't close when we did. And as soon as we closed, Ken Wright and the architects started working on foundation plans. That's when the issue arose. So, Mark, you want to carry it from here and give them a little more flavor?
No, that's an excellent summary of how things unfolded. So it's really the result of a incremental understanding of the conditions in the house as well as the conditions around the house, and then also understanding a little bit more clearly from an interior perspective the nature of the renovation. This is a house that's distinguished by a really big roof and a ribbon of windows around its perimeter. And in addressing the way that ribbon meets the ground, we recognized that we needed to raise the house a little bit so that water would drain away from the house, not drain into the house, that we would have a proper step from the ground level up into the house. It's currently virtually flush. All of this encourages water to come in. And then we have some very large rooms, rooms with significant proportions, like 20 by 40. And they have very low ceilings today. And considering the expanse of glass, it seemed inconsistent to have a low ceiling and
What is the ceiling height?
8'9". 8'9" in a 20 by 40 room, which just, architecturally is a very unusual proportion. It's almost deliberately cave-like, and that just did not seem to be in the spirit of the house.
So you're
we're using the additional inches, the additional feet, a couple of feet to create a bit of slope, very gentle, not visible, but enough to get the water away from the house. Create a step up to the first floor, so one step, a 5-inch step, and then to take the ceilings from 8'9" to 10 feet so that they're in keeping with the scale of the rooms and the sense of openness that the French doors create.
Okay. And so the roof line where it's above what we've previously granted, it's only in two areas, two gables. Is that correct?
The ridge is basically a big T, where that T just penetrated the height envelope. It's come up just a little bit more, so it peaks above. If you were to imagine a glass ceiling on the site, it peaks up just a little bit. You'll see that in some of the illustrations. So standing on the street or basically standing anywhere on the property, I think it would be very difficult unless you were in the know to distinguish the old house from the new house.
So my initial concern with this was that you'd asked for a variance once and that you're coming back and asking for a variance a second time. I now understand what's going on with regard to your limited access when you drew up the plans. I mean, you obviously have great architects and engineers, so it was very concerning. That's been alleviated from my perspective. So I don't have an issue.
Okay, Craig?
First, I heard that the increase in the height of the roof was going to be very small. It was only going to be in the peaks of the house. And now I'm hearing that the whole roof is going to come to it.
No, you're correct. It is just the ridges. The ridges are the part of the house that are non-conforming. So the very peak, and it's a T-shaped building. So it's the very ridge, that sort of knife edge of the roof.
I mean, from my point of view, it's a big property, not a gigantic house. You get much greater GFA, and I have no problem with either issue on here.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I agree with Larry. Thank you.
Okay, so now we can move from the main house, which is incredibly gorgeous and being
will be.
And well, it's being done so carefully and so meticulously, and I think the architects have done a great job. Now we move to the cottage facing it or sideways from it. Mm-hmm. And you want to put in a basement for the pool equipment, is that it?
That's correct. We don't want to hear it and we don't want to see it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Phil?
Yeah, I just have a question. So since we're moving the pool equipment and the mechanicals down there, the previous variance that was granted, is that revoked? Does that stay? I'm not quite sure the procedure. I have no issue with expanding the basement to relocate the program. I mean the pool equipment, but I was just curious what happens to the existing variance. So maybe Beth or Lenny, you could touch on that.
Well, we don't need the pool equipment outside. We don't need the variance. I think in the determination you would indicate that it was no longer effective. I think that's the way to deal with it. But
that's fine.
Could I just ask this? Is Beth, you're on?
Yes.
Can I just ask this? I want to be really clear about height. Mark, could you just, or Tom, just let's be real clear about, so that Beth has to write a decision where we're going from and where we're going to, just so that there's clarity. Because there's so many numbers floating around about the ridge height and this height, and it's not my wheelhouse at all. So let's just be clear. Maybe Tom, you should just explain what we're looking for a variance to 37.7 feet, correct? Is that correct?
That's correct, Len. And the way the numbers shape out is there's 6 inches that would be added to slope grade away from the house, 3 inches that would be added for the step that Mark was referring to,
right?
And 15 inches added to bring the 8'9" ceiling height to 10 feet.
And Beth, if you'd like, I could get the architects to send a drawing to you or a letter or something. I think that'd be a good idea. So when you wrote the decision, Mark, Tom, I want to be absolutely clear that when the building department gets your plans and they look at them and they look at the decision, they're all in sync. So can we do that?
That would be very helpful.
I think so. I think we should all work together, make sure. Billy, is that a good idea? Because there's just so many numbers floating around.
Doesn't matter to me. I mean, there's a set of plans. If we approve the set of, if the zoning board were to approve the set of plans, then that's what you're going to build, right?
Yeah, I want to be sure that the plans that are approved are the plans that Beth puts in her decision. Okay.
I think you got it.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you all.
Good job.
Nice to see you all. Phil, nice to see you there.
Well, is there a motion to close the hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you all.
Before we close the meeting, there was an application that was withdrawn, which is John and Cecilia Ford at 90 Hampton Road.
Tom, can you and Mark call me when we're done with this?
Vote on that, or?
Thanks again. Thank you.
No, you don't have to vote.
Okay, well then we'll have a motion to close the meeting.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All
Aye.
Good job, everyone. Let's see you in person, hopefully.